Hello everybody, welcome to Tousi TV, your global news channel. We come to you guys with the live coverage coming from technically just outside of Venezuela, as the US military have now targeted and destroyed another Venezuelan drug boat as Maduro is being hunted down by the American government and President Trump being labeled as the drug lord of these cartels. The conflict between the US and Venezuela, the communists in Venezuela, is escalating. The Venezuelan government decided to ask a huge number of people, civilians, to be drafted in to the army to fight the Americans, but the majority of them have said no, obviously. We're going to give you guys the latest coverage on this. We also do have the live feed from the White House, as the president is now updating on the latest operations, even internally in the United States, to fight against criminals, organized criminals, and of course rogue cities. Now, first things first, let's talk about the operation that happened earlier on just now. The US military launched a strike on another Venezuelan drug boat. Let's go to that moment, and then we'll give you guys the statement we received from the president. So this was the footage that was actually just released by the American government. That's the boat that's being targeted, and then shortly after, it's going to go boom boom. There we go. Another one gone, just off the coast of Venezuela. So yeah, completely destroyed. Another threat has now been eliminated, and obviously the communist regime, with the help of the Islamic Republic of Iran, have been trying to cause chaos for the rest of the continent, but especially in the United States, by bringing in more drugs, but also more criminals by illegally crossing the Mexican border. And but things are changing rapidly under the leadership of President Trump. The illegal crossings have completely gone back to zero, and the gangs are now being hunted down, both in the US and also outside. We have this statement from the president saying, "This morning, on my orders, the US military forces conducted a second kinetic strike against positively identified extraordinarily violent drug trafficking cartels and narco-terrorists in the Southcom area of responsibility. The strike occurred while these confirmed narco-terrorists from Venezuela were in international waters transporting illegal narcotics, a deadly weapon poisoning in Americans, headed to the US. The extremely violent drug trafficking cartels pose a threat to the United States national security, foreign policy, and vital US interests. The strike resulted in 3 male terrorists killed in action. No US forces were harmed in this strike. Be warned. If you are transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you. The illicit activities by these cartels have wrought devastating consequences on American communities for decades, killing millions of American citizens. No longer. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Now, as I said, Maduro is not too happy about this. The problem for Maduro is that he doesn't really have enough support inside the country, because nobody actually sees him as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. If it weren't for the support coming from the CCP and the Islamic Republic of Iran, Maduro's regime had, by this point, it would have already been fallen anyway, but it is falling, so it's simply about, it's a matter of time in regards to the opposition, the pro-democracy and capitalist opposition. Now, going to Maduro himself, he, as I said, is a little bit upset. And he has now said that the United States is not just making things tense, but it's straighting up attacking his country. He pointed to, obviously, the US strike early, well, that was before a few days ago, that killed 11 people and sank a Venezuelan boat. And obviously, the DC claimed that they were carrying drugs. Maduro said no, it wasn't. He has now said that this is not about fighting crime. It's a political, diplomatic, and military aggression all at once. He also says that talks with the Americans and President Trump are completely broken, blaming the threats of bombs, death, and blackmail from Washington. I mean, the irony of this man claiming to somehow have the moral high ground in the middle of all this is fascinating, that he doesn't really want to accept the reality. Everybody in the world knows, including his own allies in Iran, in China, that he is basically the main drug lord. That is his only real title right now. It's not really some sort of democratic leader with a political mandate. No, he's not. If it weren't for the power of the drugs and, of course, the training he received from the communists to actually be able to continue his dictatorship, there would absolutely be no point in Maduro right now being in office. It was only aggression and oppression from his side and his commie friends that allowed him to be in office right now. Anyway, the United States have now increased the reward for Maduro being hunted down at $50 million. Now, obviously, this number keeps going up every now and then, but the U.S. authorities are now rewarding the hunt for the, as they call it, narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy to use and carry machine guns and destructive devices in furtherance of a drug crime. Of course, there's the website, there's an email, and there's a QR code for you guys. If you somehow have any intel on how to catch Maduro, you can help the US authorities. Of course, this is primarily for the US assets and allies in South America to be able to help the Americans. Now, the Venezuelan armed forces are now conducting intensive exercises and are preparing for direct confrontation with the US military. I mean, I'm not even joking here. This is actually a serious thing where the Venezuelan commies actually think that they can fight against the United States of America. Let's go to their training. Just wasting their time, but okay. I'm not really sure what that's showing off, but they seem to be showing off something that, they can do things. Yeah, they can press a button. Well done, the Venezuelan commies. Now, meanwhile, they've also been receiving support not just from China and Iran, as usual, but also from the Russians in terms of their military equipment. The Air Force in Venezuela decided to show off its Russian Su-30 armed with a Russian supersonic 31 air-to-surface missiles, as tensions obviously continue between the two countries. Now, Maduro tried to flex. He tried to basically bring in 8 million civilians to be drafted in to the army, summoned for combat training at 312 bases. This was basically to say, we have enough people. So 8 million civilians in Venezuela were asked to join. The problem was, not many people came. They have been struggling. The barracks across the country are still empty, almost empty. There have been some, obviously there's the supporters of Maduro's socialist regime that have come in. But these are civilians. I'm going to show you one of them, by the way, a couple of them. It's civilians that I'm pretty sure, even if you manage to give them extra training for the next 5 years, that they might not last 30 seconds against the US military. The reason I say this is because, considering that, I don't know why the Venezuelan government decided to publicize that we are going to ask 8 million of our people to join, and everyone said, no, we're not coming. Don't give a number. It's embarrassing. Now, the reason for this, they also went to Russia TV saying, yes, we've asked 8 million. Our people are loyal to me. They're going to come. Nobody came. But a few people did come. This is an actual genuine photo from one of the barracks. Venezuelan civilians, these are the civilians that they managed to bring in, are now being trained with guns, as Maduro is urging more civilians to join the militias to fight against the US Army, the US military in general. Again, with all the respect to these guys, they seem quite passionate, but I'm not really, I'm not convinced. These are the photos that they published. I didn't find them randomly. So they seem to be proud of this. And Russia TV have been also publicizing it and promoting it for Venezuela, thinking that I'm pretty sure right now Pete Hegseth and the whole of the State Department and Defense, well, and also the Ministry of the Department of War, they're all panicking. Pentagon is now panicking, saying, well, this is it. We're going to have to surrender to Maduro and his gang. Just allow the drugs to come into to the US. Having said that, there's also because all people did was, for example, they decided to become rats and they sold people out. They say, yeah, my neighbor is not a good, loyal communist, for example. All it did was you just killed someone, but you yourself thinking that you're going to save your own life, but you're not joining yourself. So they're going to come for you. It happened every single time, both in China and in Russia at the time, in the Soviet Union. So I'm not really sure if how many people are now ratting people out in Venezuela, but the majority of people in the country are against communism. They're against Maduro. The problem is that, again, Maduro's regime has been getting big support from BRICS, China and the Islamic Republic and the others, and that's the only reason they managed to stay in place. They could just shoot everybody. You protest on the street, you're dead. But the opposition movement continues to be strong. The pro-democracy side in Venezuela continue to fight for freedom, even though they are being called nutters, for example. So he's now calling right-wingers. Maduro says in his latest speech that right-wingers are the symbol of imperialism. Again, it's kind of ironic coming from a communist who has been supporting the international communist movement since the beginning of the 20th century, which was by default imperialism. It was a communist empire. It was literally about the expansion of the communist empire. Somehow, apparently, Maduro is against imperialism. Anyway, the United States are preparing their military operation against Venezuela to further the attacks on the drug gangs. Obviously, the U.S. forces in the Caribbean are now on combat alert, as you also see in terms of on the map, in terms of the number of equipment and personnel that they have. 140 Tomahawk cruise missiles, F-35 fighters. We've got many other things, including obviously the Harrier attack aircrafts, and 1,687 Marines that have been deployed in order to be on standby against the socialists led by the drug gangs. So, I mean, there's so much at this point to cover, but I do want to, I'll get some of your reaction, but before we do that, let's quickly go to the White House.
38,000 people wanted 38,000 chapters at colleges, schools, other places. Numbers that, nobody's ever heard of numbers like that. So I think turning point could be, through what happened, this horrible act, it could be maybe bigger than it could have ever been had he been there. And I will say this, you'd be very happy.
Talking about turning point.
It'd be so, what was going on. And there's some very good people, because I speak at Turning Point quite a bit. And Charlie would call me up. So the last time I spoke to him, he said, sir, I think it was Phoenix. Sir, could you get to Phoenix? This was like in a day. I said, Charlie, I'm the president of the United States. You called me asking me if I could speak tomorrow in Phoenix. You can't do that to me, Charlie. But usually I ended up going. He was great. He was a great guy, and he didn't deserve this. He didn't deserve this, believe me.
Ilhan Omar, after his assassination, called Charlie Kirk a reprehensible human being. Should she be stripped of her community assignments?
I would say, I think she's a disgraceful person. I think she's a disgraceful person, a loser. It's amazing the way people vote. I know it's people from her area, maybe of the world. I don't know. They got here and they vote her in. It's hard to believe, but I think she's a disgusting person.
And one more question, if I could. A lot of these, in recent of these trans shooters that we've seen over the last couple incidents, this flag right here is up and down 14th Street. This is what would be the trans flag. A lot of people are very threatened by this flag. It means a lot of different negative things to people, violence. Would you be opposed to taking this flag down, up and down the streets of D.C.?
Well, I wouldn't be. Then they'll sue and they'll get freedom of speech stuff, so that'll happen. But I would have no problem with it. I will say, and Steve might just mention this, Todd, you might mention it too, because we're putting out an order. You know, freedom of speech means you can burn the American flag, which I think is horrible. But I noticed something over the last little while. You know, as you do this, you start noticing things that you wouldn't normally think. It really causes unrest and violence when they burn American flag. So the American flag, I wanted anybody burns the American flag, go to jail based on freedom of speech, goes to jail immediately. But the freedom of speech protected them, right? And so, and that's been argued a couple of times. And you know, it's one of those things. But you know what? Hasn't been argued, and we're going to be arguing it, I think, very soon. And that's the violence. They incite violence. So when I saw it just yesterday, they burned the American flag, and people that were there were fine. And all of a sudden, they're going crazy, and there's fist fights. It wasn't in Memphis either. But I will say, it incites violence. And I think you just do the exact same thing. Don't use freedom of speech. Use the incitement of violence. I mean, it's really, you had to see, these people were going at it. Yeah. And, you know, you could burn other things if people just sit there, they fall asleep. You burn the American flag, and on both sides. But the level of violence I saw this flag burning cause was incredible. It was an incitement. So I hope you guys are going to be able to do that, Pam, right?
Well, there's also groups called Trans-Tifa. So perhaps if you can label them a domestic terrorist group, then you can, in all reality, you could take that flag down because it would represent the Trans-Tifa.
I think you probably could. Again, you'll be sued, and it's okay. I've been sued before a couple of times. You may have said. Anyway.
Netanyahu said that he doesn't rule out targeting Hamas anywhere they are. You said that you don't want to see Qatar hit again. Are there any guarantees that Qatar...
Well, he won't be hitting in Qatar. As I say, I call it Qatar, you call it Qatar. You're actually more right, but actually you're allowed to go. The Emir said, you can say it any way you want, but I've always thought of it as Qatar. I think it's a beautiful sound. And actually they've been a very good ally. And a lot of people don't know that. But he won't be hitting Qatar, but he will be maybe going after. Now, there was an article that I read in a newspaper just about an hour ago where Hamas said they're going to use the 20 hostages as human shields. They're going to bring them up from the dark tunnels, and they're going to put them in the line of fire so that if Israel goes forward, they're going to die. And I thought that was very terrible, and I put out a statement on that. You saw that.
Mr. President, I want Charlie Kirk, in retrospect, given all of the moving ways that this White House has paid tribute to Charlie Kirk,
right.
Do you think it would have been fitting to lower the flags to have staff when Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota House Speaker, was gunned down by an assassin as well?
I'm not familiar. The
Minnesota House Speaker, a Democrat, who was assassinated this summer.
Well, if the governor had asked me to do that, I would have done that. But the governor of Minnesota didn't ask me. I didn't. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I would have if somebody had asked me. People make requests for the lowering of flag, and oftentimes you have to say no because it would be a lot of lowering. The flag would never be up. Had the governor of Minnesota asked me to do that, I would have done that gladly.
And given the killing of Melissa Hortman, the attack on Paul Pelosi, the attack on Gabby Giffords, the attack on the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, why make the case that violence is only on one side? It seems to be taking place.
I didn't say it's on one side, but I say the radical left causes tremendous violence, and they seem to do it in a bigger way. But the radical left really is caused a lot of problems for this country. I really think they hate our country. Okay, yeah, please.
This may be related to the RICO work that you're doing, and I'd like to confirm.
And we are really looking at that seriously.
Vice President Vance was speaking with Stephen Miller earlier today about targeting NGOs that they were saying foment violence.
Right.
Is that? Can you speak more to that? And what NGOs specifically are you looking to target, sir?
A number of them. Steve, please.
Yeah,
There we
so
go.
what you're referring to is there are these nonprofit entities that organize, as the president mentioned, attacks on ICE officers, attacks on Border Patrol agents, organize doxing campaigns, which are a violation of federal law. They break off cement and they bring it into riots. They have organized drop points for weapons, organized drop points for gas masks, organized drop points for all the materials necessary to launch a riot. Of course, you saw that during the Black Lives Matter riots as well, too. So there's this whole network of organizations. And I think the key point the president's been making is somebody is paying for all of this. This is not happening for free. And so under the president's direction, the attorney general is going to find out who is paying for it, and they will now be criminally liable for paying for violence.
And you know, a new thing that I've been seeing a lot of lately, but never saw it before, is they're walking in with bricks and rocks and everything. And the FBI or the Border Patrol or ICE or the police are grabbing them and taking them away, and that's great. And then they whip out, a hammer, and it's a beautiful hammer. Really, it's nice. You know, this is not a hammer somebody happens up. These are serious hammers, beautiful, brand new hammers, and they start breaking up the concrete sidewalks and the granite curbs in many cases. Granite is hard to cut, you know, it's very hard stone, and they're banging away and handing out pieces of stone. So instead of having it in bags, they're banging the sidewalk, knocking that. You have to see what some of these sidewalks look like when they finish, and especially the curbs, because the granite curbs are very, very expensive and
Beautiful hammer.
they're great, and you know, very hard. They are almost indestructible, but not when it gets pounded on for 20 minutes by some pretty strong guy. And then they hand out big chunks of stone so that people can throw them at the police and people can drop them off bridges into car windows. No, we have a long way to go, and we're going to make it all good. We're going to make it really safe. This country is going to be safe. We've got almost 3.5 years. Think of that, 3.5 years. It's a long time. It goes quickly. But at the end of that time, I hope one of the many things we can say is that we made our cities safe again. Thank you very much, everybody.
It's important to mention. Wait. So the director of the FBI. Chaos.
Moving everybody. Thank you.
What is happening with the live cam? Just walk away. Anyway, we could stop that while the live camera goes away. The director of the FBI, Kash Patel, has now also confirmed the DNA evidence match in the Charlie Kirk assassin, the suspect. So that's, you know, despite the fact that it's not cooperating anymore. We're going to get some reaction from the live chat, but in case you joined us late, the quick update, a summary of what the US military have done. They did target and destroy a Venezuelan drug boat, which we can quickly go and show to you guys now, and then we'll get some reaction. So this is that's now been released by the authorities in Washington, D.C. That's the boat that they targeted just off the coast of Venezuela. This is technically still the international waters, and it's gone. So that's been destroyed. But the Venezuelans, as I said, they have been struggling. Maduro has been trying to get, he asked 8 million Venezuelans to come and be drafted into the military to fight against the Americans. They didn't come, but a few people came, which was a little bit embarrassing. So all they're doing is they are posting these showing off videos of their military equipment, mostly brought by the Iranian regime and the Russians. For example, this. That's all they can do. Yeah, so 3 members of the cartel have been eliminated on those boats. They were being transferred to go and obviously get access to the big base for the actual drugs. Having said that, let's see what you guys are thinking. We have Linda saying, I'm glad to see that you can smile a little bit. The last few days have been hard for your country as well as mine. Yeah, it's been rough, obviously. I mean, the last few days, well, the first couple of days of when I found out about my friend Charlie Kirk being assassinated. That was, to be fair, the first few hours, it was when we didn't even know technically if he was gone or not, although looking back, the footage was quite obvious. I was lost, which was it's quite rare because usually I can keep my cool. But yeah, you gotta have to move on. You gotta have to move forward with life and continue to fight for the truth. Now, let's see. Ruth says more drug boats are smugglers. Most drug boats are smugglers. They hide their drugs, so we use X-ray. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times the boats don't necessarily will have the drugs on them. That's not really how it works. They have the actual the drug traffickers that will be transferred to other places to go and follow the bigger boats for that. Fairy Tale Life says, why are they wasting their ammunition just to show off? Like, do they think it's intimidating? In my opinion, it's just stupid. I'm pretty sure it's just blank fake anyway, but it's still a bit of a waste of time. It's very old school. These sort of regimes, they still believe in showing off in a... So you always have military parades, which is still, at this point, military parades, which was a huge thing in the Roman Empire. You now see it more from the eastern side, so in China or Iran or Russia. You don't necessarily see it much from the western side, although the Americans could pull it off, relatively speaking, and they did have one recently. But the concept of the military parades is not really just about the parades. Again, the old-fashioned culture of which came from Rome, which is also about showing off your skills or showing off your equipment. It's a little bit of a waste of time. It's also you kind of telling people what you have, so it's probably best not to show that much intel, although they never show you everything. Anyway, there is a super chat coming from Trooper Bear. What do we have? Saying the people that guarantee the protester the liberty to burn the flag are the soldiers whose coffins are draped with the flag. Thanks for this. And Richard said they're bringing in a BB gun to the big gunfight. Now, my best moments of what the Venezuelans are doing, genuinely, I'm still laughing at this, is that they thought, where is it? Yeah, as I said, they asked 8 million Venezuelans to be drafted in. They basically, most of them said no. A few turned up, and this is what they're dealing with. These are the civilians that are now being trained by the communists in Venezuela to fight against the U.S. military. Again, as I said, I don't know these guys personally, but the look of these images don't really give me enough confidence on behalf of the Venezuelan communists. I don't think they're going to survive against even like an intern member of the armed forces in America. What's this? It says, come to Denmark. I know some Iranian drug dealer with guns who like to meet you. So okay, that's a death threat. Thanks for the death threat. So we get that. Also, she or he or it followed it with the pride flag, trans flag, some sort of flag, and a Danish flag. So yeah, I mean, if how does that work? How this is? To be fair, I do appreciate if you're gonna send death threats, which I get regularly. Be creative. I appreciate that. That's quite fun. It's a fun way of saying, yeah, I know someone who's going to kill you. Fair enough. All right, you can try. Anyway, next, what else do we have? You can, by the way, report this person if you want to. Let's go to the rest of the normal human beings. Did somebody say Walmart shoppers? Hang on. Wait, where is it gone? Somebody said in the live chat. There we go. It's Groucho Marx. I know who you meant. Walmart shoppers. You mean these? No. This one. Such an insult. Anyway, Walmart shoppers. With all due respect to the Walmart shoppers, by the way. Going back to some... so they've got it. That's frightening. What, the Venezuelan women or the death threats against me? I'm not really sure which one is actually terrifying. Lisa from Israel says this is Western Intifada. And Dave responded to Negus. What sort of name is that? I have no idea, by the way. Saying, you stupid. Yeah, stupid. Someone said Ayatollah is trans. That is extremely, extremely incorrect. It's not Ayatollah, it's Ayatoilet. Ayatoilet, get it right. Ayatoilet is trans. Now, Natalia says Qatar is nobody's friend. Yeah, Qatar, I think they see themselves as survivors. So because they're like tiny and they have to compete with Saudi. So they're like, well, we have to have the Islamists on our side. Let's go fund the Muslim Brotherhood. But we also want to make money. We want to be capitalist, but it's good to have the Islamists just in case on our side. It's backfired massively. It's not sustainable the way the Qataris are running their country. But the idea is to basically keep dragging them away from the Islamic Republic. So that Negus human, whatever the name is, who basically sent a death threat, is now saying free Palestine from Eritrean queen, queer, not queen, queer in Denmark, radical Marxist queer. When they tell you who they are, believe them. All right. And Mark says, thanks to see, enjoy the honeymoon in Florida. Yeah, and the thing is, the next few days, at least we're going to slightly relax. It's been a rough few days, a rough week. Also, we had to go around to the parks and everything else in Orlando. So now I can relatively relaxed. Although, if the Venezuelan dictator Maduro wants to ruin the rest of my holiday, he is free to do that. If he wants to like somehow do something stupid and start attacking the US Navy, feel free, Maduro, but it will be your funeral. Yubi says, thanks. Reports of tanks in Gaza City tonight. IDF seem to be moving in. So we did get the update from the IDF earlier on, saying that the Prime Minister believes the majority have now left, enough people have now left Gaza City for the Israeli Defense Forces to be able to go and occupy. So we will keep an eye on that, and we will come back and give you guys all the live updates. If you haven't, of course, subscribed, make sure to do that. And the best thing you can also do is to become a member of Tousi TV Plus to get full access to the channel by scanning the QR code or going on tousi.tv or finding the link in the description. And of course, download the Tousi TV app from your app stores, the home of geopolitical news. I'm Maya Tousi, and we are the media.